What is up, everyone? Brian Zane here with my review of All Out 2023. It was All Elite Wrestling's big pay-per-view offering, just 7 days removed from their last pay-per-view offering at Wembley Stadium. All in, 81,000 people there at that show, and that was certainly a show that I think was worthy of the hype of a venue that large, a huge show in AEW's history. They're going to hang their hats on for a very long time. But when you spend as much time as they did on promoting that show, they did have this other matter of, oh, we've got this other pay-per-view back in the States 1 week later. So you're the build for this. People have complained about the build for pay-per-views in AEW being not great to begin with. So when you basically have the Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision between All Out, or All In and All Out, in order to promote one of those pay-per-views, things are going to feel a bit rushed. So I think looking at this card on paper, it's hard to justify spending a separate $50 on. I think people are just fatigued of wrestling right now as it is because of what happened in Wembley. And you've also got, Payback the night before this show took place from WWE. You've got this. There's a lot of wrestling to go on. And people, I think, are just really frazzled mentally about it. Because, I'm trying to think of other notable things in the wrestling world that happened this past week in the days leading up to the weekend. Oh yeah, that's right. CM Punk got fired. I've had a lot of people asking me to talk about this. I've been wanting to talk about this. People have been asking for a CM Punk in AEW retrospective video. Don't worry, folks. Just don't touch that dial because it is coming sooner than later now in light of all these new details. Look, what I'm going to say about the CM Punk firing, which stemmed from the incident between he and Jack Perry at Wembley, between their matches, I'm going to say that there's no innocent party in all this. Everyone bears some level of responsibility. You can say Jack Perry bore some responsibility for egging him on. You can say that the Young Bucks, the Elite, have some responsibility. You can say Tony Khan has responsibility on this because of how the locker room culture and the behavior around just one individual has been allowed to fester like this. But I think also most of the responsibility probably lays at the feet of the guy who threw the first punch and tried choking out a wrestler after getting in his face about this glass spot that, at the end of the day, it was Jack Perry's decision, to take the real glass. Was it foolish? Sure, yeah, but he's young and he'll learn. I'm not sure why CM Punk was suddenly put in a position to have to police anyone about a glass spot. Because as far as I know, I don't think he's a producer. All the stories that precipitated and preceded this moment at Wembley Stadium, the story of CM Punk kicking Ryan Nemeth out of Collision, I believe it was at one point. Other stories like that. The fact that they apparently sent a legal letter to AEW because he thought that he was being called out on in an episode of Being the Elite when it had nothing to do with him. And if we're talking about, you're not allowed to talk negatively about any of the parties in this situation, what was that first promo back when Punk came back to Collision and called the guys counterfeit bucks and said everyone was soft? That was okay. But when Jack Perry says it's real glass, cry me a river, that is enough to start a fight? Okay, hey, who's the young kid and who's the near, 40-something-year-old man in this situation who should know better, It just seems like it was a bad situation from the start when, honestly, I think if people had been fired last year in the Brawl Out situation, that might have nipped some of this in the bud. CM Punk being allowed to come back by being put on this island separate from the Elite was never going to work out. There's stories that the Elite wanted Punk to kind of have a 6-month probationary period before working together. And some people might think that's too much, and some people might think it's not necessary. But people have probationary periods in work all the time in workplaces. And I don't think wrestling should be any different. I think that all of this just comes from the fact that CM Punk is a reactionary individual. And usually there's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes toward the safety of other wrestlers, when this fight happens within feet of the owner of the company, And when the owner of the company says that he feared for his life, like, that's a lot of red flags. People are saying that Jack Perry should get fired. People saying that, you know, the Elite should be fired for whatever reason. CM Punk is the one who got physical. And he is the one who has been the common denominator in all of this. And as much as it pains me to say, because I like CM Punk, I just think that this has been a situation that is untenable, unsustainable. Everything about the dynamic from when he came back screamed, oh my God, there's no way this is going to end amicably. There's no way this is going to end cool for everyone. So I'm not terribly surprised it got to the point that it did, but I am just disappointed. Like I said, I think everyone has some share of responsibility for how things have gone here. It's going to be another big test for AEW and for Tony Khan. We are in another kind of post-brawl out situation here where there's all this big blow up over things that honestly should have been nipped in the bud and communicated over some time earlier. But, you know, those things didn't happen. And hey, you know what? I'm not one to judge about it because I think some of my biggest interpersonal problems in my life and my career over the years came from a lack of communication. And so I see that happening and I understand, I'm empathetic to it, but it's a professional workplace. It's professional wrestling, but it's also the professional, that's the word in there. And, you know, CM Punk is the one reacting to anything he could vaguely think is about him. He's the one starting fights. He's the one trying to pick and choose who can and can't be there. If the entire company has to walk on eggshells to satisfy one individual, even if he is arguably the biggest star and the biggest draw in your company, that can't be good for the overall, you know, morale and harmony in the locker room. I would imagine that's got to be really tough. So I think that, you know, it's one of those things where Tony Khan said in statements, it was an incredibly hard decision he did not want to make, but was advised to do it. And, you know, I think that looking at all the circumstances here, how could CM Punk not be let go after this body of work that has been collected over the last year and a half? It just, you know, it's sad, and, you know, we will see if, you know, we'll see how AEW bounces back from this. And we'll see as early as this show in All Out. And long term, we'll see how they can do without their big draw in CM Punk. I think that it's unfortunate that it got to this point. Like, I'm not happy about any of this. I'm not happy with the fact that, like, every day for the last year, there's been just constant stories about Punk, updates about Punk, and all this drama. And unfortunately, it's gotten in the way of what is a very good wrestling product. It's this dark cloud that has kind of hung over the company over the last year or so. And, you know, I don't think it's going to go away immediately with Punk's firing. It sounds like there might be, you know, legal action coming down the pike in the near future, perhaps. Who knows? But this is the first step toward healing, I guess. And if that combined with, you know, what we saw this past weekend for programming on Collision and on All Out, then we will see where the cards fall. That's my immediate take right now on the CM Punk story. Obviously, new details break about this every day. So who knows what we'll be thinking about it a week from now or two. But there will be a CM Punk in AEW video coming, again, sooner than you may think. So stay tuned. So yeah, I guess now we can talk about All Out, you know, the show that we are here for in Chicago. Obviously, CM Punk was going to be a relatively big part of it, I would imagine. So his absence, I think, was felt at times. Again, this is a show that got very rushed and kind of incomplete build on some of these matches, many of these matches. Oh, by the way, I will say Tony Khan deserves credit for going out there before the Chicago weekend and explaining that CM Punk was fired. To go into Punk's home territory and make that announcement and just kind of deal with the brunt of the angry fans, that takes guts. Not everyone would have done that. I think a lot of other people might have just waited until the weekend had passed when people had, bought the pay-per-view going, oh, maybe CM Punk's going to be there, and kind of leading them on. So in that sense, I think it was important for him to be honest about that. So how will All Out do? How will this show recover with ramshackle build and also one of the top stars gone in controversial fashion, and you're performing in his hometown? What could go wrong? So anyway, the show officially begins with the ROH tag title matchup as the new champions Adam Cole and MJF defend against the Dark Order's John Silver and Alex Reynolds, who won a battle royal on Rampage for the title match here. We get a double clothesline chant and a kangaroo kick chant to start things off here. The chants want to hit the double clothesline. I love how Nigel McGuinness on commentary says they're kind of telegraphing it here. MJF wants to hit the kick on Reynolds, but John Silver running interference. Max seems to have hurt his neck again, and Adam Cole concerned for at least one of his friend's neck health. Silver attacking MJF with the chair to the back of the neck. Things look serious. The champion's being taken away to the back. Cole goes it alone for a bit as we get a single clothesline chant. Evil Uno getting some heat at ringside as he beats up Cole when the ref's not looking, but Adam's staying tough, kicking out of moves here, even kicks out of their own double clothesline. Suddenly MJF comes back to a huge pop, still selling the neck, gets the hot tag. He's a house of fire. He hits that kangaroo kick. Evil Uno super kicked off the apron. We get the double clothesline to Reynolds, and the champs retain. 3 stars out of 5 for me in this opener. I loved the panto in this matchup here. A lot of the big played up babyface theatrics, what have you, especially from MJF in this one. And the crowd went along with it. They are totally invested in the Better Than You Bebe team. And so when MJF comes back, man, they're cheering for him. And earlier when he does the sportsmanship eye poke thing, they're loving it. They love to see him back and make the fiery babyface comeback and help win the day. So yeah, I think this was definitely a fun opener to help play more into the storyline here. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit to Dynamite, but the stuff with Roderick Strong playing into this and entering that tournament for a chance to fight MJF, the whole neck health thing with the Kingdom, I think is some of just great character work for Roderick Strong. So anyway, as MJF walks up the ramp, Samoa Joe makes his entrance, gives Max a little shove as he walks by. NXT memories, baby. MJF jumps Joe in the ring in response, takes a whole bunch of security guards to break it up. Then we go to that matchup for the ROH TV Championship as Samoa Joe defends against Shane Taylor, a former TV champ in his own right, and he was one of the more dominant ones of the last 5 years or so. Quick question, why was Bobby Cruz the ring announcer for this matchup, but not the other ROH title match we just had? Joe and Shane lay into each other at the start, Shane taking Joe down for a moment, but the champ gets a big kick in, following up with a dive. Joe with a sleeper over the ropes, but Taylor drags him over and drops him. I love that. Hits a second rope splash and we get a kick out. They're back to trading strikes. Joe with tons of knees finally transitions into the coquina clutch. We get the tap out. Joe wins and retains. I'm going to give this one 2.5 stars out of 5. This was a hard-hitting affair, to be sure. Love seeing Shane Taylor getting some pay-per-view time here. I think he's an awesome worker, and I think the work he did in ROH, I think, spoke for itself, and he really deserves to get more time like this. So I think it was really cool, but at the same time, really no question who was going to win this one. On we go to a match with the TNT Championship as Luchasaurus defends against Darby Allin. That's Luchasaurus, not Christian Cage, who's the one who's been holding the championship for a while. I do love how Christian's just kind of co-opted. He's kind of an unofficial co-TNT champion saying that we will do this and that. I love that gimmick. Darby is accompanied by Nick Wayne, by the way. Darby starting off fast, but caught by Saurus and thrown into the barricade, swinging him into the steel steps. Christian telling Luchasaurus to maim Darby. Darb's now wearing a crimson mask and is crushed by the steps while Nick Wayne can only look on. At a certain point, though, can't the referee intervene? Darby hits another gear, hits some quick impressive moves on the champ, flying off the top rope, but he is deflected. I've never seen someone's rib tape used to smother them before. Darby comes back, sits Luchasaurus down on the outside, does a big dive off the top rope onto him. Love that near fall where Darby counters the backbreaker into the crucifix bomb. We get a big, scary looking bump out of the German. The torture rack's applied. Now Cage brings out a white towel and eggs Nick Wayne on to throw it for him. Just say no, Nick. Darby torpedoes himself into Christian and keeps keeps going. We get an avalanche code red and somehow a kick out. Christian threatens to concerto Nick Wayne in front of Darby. He's very torn. Luchasaurus with some repeat tombstones, a big lariat to the back of the head, the cover and the win for the big old dinosaur. After the bell, Nick is held down and forced to watch. Christian looking to do more damage, but then a lot of other wrestlers run out to make the save. I'll give it 3.5 stars out of 5. This was a great big versus little match. I think Darby really excels in matches like this where he gets to kind of like be bounced around by his opponents and just sell for them all the time. I think that's just some of the strongest work you see Darby Allin do is when he goes against someone who is like a big hoss like Luchasaurus. I thought the story they're telling now with Nick Wayne kind of being the protege for Allin at ringside is an interesting wrinkle. It's showing that Wayne is like this liability. And now Darby kind of finds himself in an interesting position of mentorship. It's kind of reflective of, the stuff with he and Sting. I wonder maybe he'll look to Sting for advice on how to mentor this young one in Nick Wayne. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. Up next, big hoss fight. Let's go, people, as Powerhouse Hobbs takes on Miro. What a sight for sore eyes Miro's been, by the way. It's been a while since we've seen him regularly on television. Good to see him back. And from the lockup, we get the meat chance. That's what this match, I should say, is really all about. It is truly big, meaty men slapping meat. Hobbs looks good with the big old clothesline. Miro answers back a bit later with a spinning heel kick. Hobbs catching Miro with a suplex and takes over, but Miro, using Hobbs' own momentum against him, follows up with a rolling dive off the apron. Slap that meat chant. The two men trade blows, and every blow is met with meat by the audience. A meaty superplex by Miro, and the fans are alive for this. Power slam gets a kick out and a meat forever chant. Miro connects with the kick, catching Hobbs in the game over, but Hobbs is able to break the hold. A holy meat chant, a spine buster, and a very close kick out. Hobbs trying his own game over, but Miro's having none of that, gets it back on Hobbs, and Miro wins by submission. After the bell, Hobbs putting his hand out for sportsmanship. They shake on it, but psych, Hobbs attacks Miro. Suddenly we hear some music playing, and we get the AEW debut of Miro's unnamed yet hot and flexible wife. She actually runs into the ring and hits Hobbs with a chair. What is she doing? We do get a beat that meat chant though, Jesus. Hobbs corners her until Miro hits Hobbs with a chair. We see the couple in the ring, but Miro just looks at her weird and leaves the ring. I give this match 4 stars out of 5. Also, I give it 5 meats out of 5. This was just a fun, big man matchup. Hard-hitting, and the Chicago crowd made it so much more entertaining. I'm kind of surprised that they didn't just start saying meat during the referee count, so it's like meat, meat, meat! Also interesting to see Lana/CJ Perry finally appear in AEW. It only seemed like a matter of time once Miro got signed that Lana would make her way over to AEW. But the storyline's very interesting here. They're trying to explain on commentary that Miro has forsaken everything in his path to be a dominant wrestler, and I guess that also means his wife. Now it looks like AEW is trying their hand at making a storyline with the intent of breaking these two up. I don't understand what it is about this couple that everyone wants to see them split. TBS Championship match as Kris Statlander defends against Ruby Soho, who's accompanied by the new Women's World Champion, Saraya. Kris coming out in Zoolander-inspired gear, a ridiculously good-looking reference. Women trading strength for strength at the start. Statlander throwing herself knees first at Soho in the corner. She chases Saraya around the ring and pays for it. Ruby works her over for several minutes. Big tilt-a-whirl backbreaker into a twisting Michinoku driver by Kris. We get a kick out. We get another double down. Saraya ripping the sign on the front row that says Saraya calls fries chips. Top rope power slam by the champ and another kick out. We get the poison Rana, tornado DDT, low Rana, and still Statlander kicks out. We get a distraction by Saraya, allowing Soho to hit No Future and Destination Unknown, but Kris kicks out again. The referee is distracted. Ruby grabs the spray paint, but then Toni Storm shows up from under the ring, grabs the spray can from her. That distraction allows Statlander to take advantage and get the win. I give it 2.5 stars out of 5. This was a competitive matchup. I really enjoyed a lot of the close near falls we had in this one, and Kris is really strong here as well, kicking out of a lot of big moves. I do think that the transformation of Toni Storm has been very entertaining as of late. I mean, you know, it pays to be different in wrestling. How many other women like Toni Storm had that kind of like punk rocker gimmick, that look when they wrestled? I mean, Toni Storm had that for a while. For her to shed that and go into this like Hollywood starlet kind of thing going on, who's throwing shoes and has the vapors or whatever and has her hair done up. I think it's just really cool that she's been able to do that and kind of seamlessly, and I think it's getting over. I think it's a winner for me. Well, Ricky Starks lately has become a baddie again. After he lost a match to CM Punk on Collision, he took it out on the special guest referee, Ricky Steamboat, whipped him with a belt. He wanted a strap match with Ricky Steamboat, but on Collision, the Dragon swerved him and brought out another Dragon in Bryan Danielson, back for the first time since breaking his arm at Forbidden Door, which wasn't that long ago. So the fact that he's back here in a match like this early makes me a little nervous. Steamboat himself's on commentary for this one, which I question. He keeps calling Bryan Danielson Bryan Donaldson repeatedly for one thing. Before the match though, Starks jumping Danielson busts him open, finally allows the match to start properly, already on top, just choking Bryan repeatedly with the strap. Dragon slips out, starts whipping away on Starks' back and chest, torturing Ricky for a while now. Both men are bleeding. Trading belt thwacks back and forth, Ricky slaps him some more, and that just fires Bryan up. Just some brutal strap smacks. Big Bill shows up though and attacks Danielson. That prompts Steamboat to get up and do what's right. He throws some hands and is bailed out by Bryan. The Busaiku knee is intercepted with a spear by Starks and a kick out. Danielson gets the knee off a moment later. The label lock is in, starts to choke Ricky with the strap, Dapper Yapper style. The look on Starks' face as he's fading out is iconic. The referee calls it. Danielson wins. This one gets 5 stars out of 5 for me, man. What an epic strap match this was. I mean, just the story told by the brutality against both men. Like, very few people are good at selling like Bryan Danielson. And I think he's kind of in that position where it's like he's always going to be in that gray area. Is he just selling it or is something worse happening? I think that kind of heightens the drama in matches like this. And for Danielson to come in the clutch the way he has, to come back here on relatively short notice to fill in for what I'm assuming would be CM Punk in another timeline, to have this just very brutal physical match with Starks, and it also made Starks look great too. Even in defeat, he looked really strong. I mean, just all across the board, this was a match that really kind of checked all the boxes for me. Katsuyori Shibata and Eddie Kingston team up to take on the Blackpool Combat Club's Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. Kind of an evergreen story since the Kingston-Claudio rivalry is forever. And speaking of Kingston and forever, he paid tribute to Terry Funk with a Claudio Sucks Eggs shirt. Claudio want nothing to do with Kingston in this matchup, immediately tags to Yuta once Eddie tags in. They finally scrap on the outside until Yuta dives onto Eddie. Kingston's worked over by the BCC for some time here, a couple of big stomps by Claudio. Eddie takes Wheeler down with an STO out of nowhere, which allows him to tag into Shibata. Nice exchange of big moves between the ROH champ and the pure champ. Yuta comes in and Shibata cleans his damn clock with that spinning back fist. My word. Shibata's got both opponents in submission simultaneously. Claudio decks him, which only hurts Yuta. I love that. A few minutes later, back to Kingston and Claudio in the ring. They're slapping. They're smacking. Kingston kicks out of the neutralizer. The Rico LeBomb is countered. Back fist. Claudio down. Shibata has Yuta caught in a sleeper. Claudio hitting Eddie with a European uppercut and covers. Shibata tries to make the save, but he can't. Claudio wins. 4 stars out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed that match near the end of it, and I loved that finish. That was so unique and so simple, though. It's like the idea of the guy in the corners trying to help his partner out by keeping the other guy at bay, but it totally screws them over in the end, and just, God, what a heartbreaker that was. And like I said, this is a storyline that can really go on forever because, Claudio and Kingston may never get their situation resolved, but if it means more entertaining matches like this, I'm all for it. Singles action next as Konosuke Takeshita takes on Kenny Omega. It was Takeshita who actually pinned Omega the previous week in their big tag team match at Wembley Stadium, so this was the follow-up to that. Omega comes out to battle cry for the first time in a long time. Early on, Takeshita Takeshita with a back suplex, and boy, Omega's bump looks pretty scary there. It's a wonder he didn't break his neck. He is able to walk though. He hits You Can't Escape on the floor, follows it up with a moonsault off the barricade. Takeshita with a big ol' flying lariat coming off the ropes. The damnedest alley-oop I've ever seen, face first into the turnbuckles. Don Callis stacking chairs on Kenny's body while the referee's back is turned. Takeshita dives onto him on the outside, looks painful for both. Takeshita with a top rope senton, but he just takes the knees. Omega with the Terminator dive, a V-trigger, but Konosuke lays him out with a huge clothesline afterward. Omega teasing an avalanche one-winged angel, but Takeshita slips out, hits the avalanche blue thunderbomb, and Omega lands right in his leg too. Yikes. Don Callis wants to straight up murder Kenny's ass with a screwdriver, but Omega gets out of the way in time. Takeshita grabs the screwdriver, almost gets stabby himself, but the referee catches it. Omega is still in this fight until Takeshita lowers the knee pad, hits the running knee to the face, and pins to win. Takeshita beats Omega once again. This one gets 4.5 stars out of 5 for me. I thought this was another fantastic matchup here. Takeshita really has proven that he is going to be one of those top stars in AEW, in America, I think for quite a while here. I mean, this program with Omega, where he's been kind of lined up as kind of the anti-Omega here alongside Don Callis, has done wonders for him. And now he's kind of on that same level just by virtue of beating Omega twice in really recent order. So I think this was definitely one of the stronger matches of the evening. Not the tippy top for me, but I think it was still right up there. In your semi-main event, which was built on the back of a single backstage segment that was filmed at Wembley but then aired a few days later on Dynamite, you've got Bullet Club Gold and the Guns taking on FTR and the Young Bucks. A lot of rabble from the crowd before the bell rings. Were they CM Punk chants? Maybe there were some in there. From what I heard, it was kind of hard to tell, but once the Jackson brothers got tagged in the match proper, you can tell the crowd is very anti them. There is an "Oh, Cry Me a River" chant during this matchup though, which to me seems very kind of anti-Punk. And if CM Punk was, it's one thing if Chicago doesn't like the Young Bucks. That seems to be a given. But if Punk has also lost Chicago, then that's how you know this story's crazy. Dax Harwood takes the heat in this thing, stuck in the wrong corner of the ring for a long time. We had a lot of 8-man madness though, including a 4-way sharpshooter. Dax finally escapes, tags in Nick Jackson, who gets a big boovation. We actually get some cohesion between Dax and Matt Jackson for a moment. I've never seen a triple Power and Glory spot before, but we got that onto Austin Gunn. Nick and Dax do the Shatter Machine, and Austin does the best "oh shit" before taking it. Dax and Matt do the BTE trigger even. Jay White with a very sneaky blind tag. He's able to hit Cash Wheeler with the Blade Runner, and Colton gets the cover and the win. 4 stars out of 5 for me. You know, it takes a lot of work to make 8 guys all stand out on their own in a tag match like this, but I think they did a pretty good job pulling that off. I think this match was a lot of fun at points. It was a good continuation of the FTR Bucks feud as of right now, where they don't exactly respect each other, but they're not fighting each other at the moment either. They're not coming to blows at this point. But this quartet of like Jay White, Juice Robinson, and the Guns are, no pun intended, pretty golden. I think all 4 of those guys have a great rapport, and they're a lot of fun to watch. Finally, the main event for the AEW International Championship. The first time that belt's been defended at the main event, being defended by Orange Cassidy, who's also making his pay-per-view main event debut, defending against Jon Moxley. And I tell you what, the way they have gone about building Orange Cassidy, not just the last year, but also specifically this time between like the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, has been just really good stuff. The way they've been building him as this very similar to kind of like what Seth Rollins is presently in WWE, which I alluded to in the Payback review. Somebody who is a champion but is fighting through injury. The injuries mount every time he goes out there and wrestles. You never know when the last fight's actually going to happen. But man, they've been really building Orange up in just an incredible way. And the promos, he had 2 promos on the Dynamite before, this pay-per-view. She shows you how much they're really trying to invest in him at that point. That promo he had at the end of the show, the live one where he said, "I'm Orange Cassidy, I don't have a catchphrase," like that blew up. I thought that was a great promo for him. Just a real star-making couple of weeks. But when you see that build on Dynamite, you're like, man, you absolutely know that he's not winning this main event. Orange goes to the old hands in the pockets, but Mox has no time for that business. Moxley sets the pace early on, even rolls through a cross body to continue the beating, but Orange fires back with a stun dog millionaire and a dive. Moxley throws the champ into the ring post, and now Orange has juiced. The announcers describe the pool of blood at their feet at the announce position. Ugh. Moxley just playing with his food at this point, putting his hands in his pockets in mocking fashion. Big old back rake, and it bites a forehead. Moxley comes back after kicking out of the Orange punch, wearing down Orange some more. He goes to the outside. Moxley pulls away the padding on the floor, teasing the pile driver, but Orange countering with the beach break on the concrete. Back in the ring, Mox with a cutter, but Cassidy comes back with a punch, a spear, and a kick out. We get the kicks, but this time they're for real. Moxley fights back and just clubs the crap out of him, hits a Death Rider and somehow a kick out. Moxley prays to himself because he knows what he must do. Orange fights up, puts the hands up, and gives the double deuce. Another Death Rider. Moxley wins and is the new champion. I'm going to give this one 5 stars out of 5. Give the man his damn flowers. First of all, give Jon Moxley all the credit in the world for how he's been able to kind of carry the company on his back in multiple occasions and in multiple times that CM Punk has been gone for a while. But got to give Orange Cassidy his due. If you are still an Orange Cassidy hater after the run he's had this past year, the phenomenal almost year time he's had with the belt, he's seen through a name change on the belt, putting on great matches for months and months, capping off with an amazing main event match that made him look like the most courageous underdog hero I've seen in a while. And going against, Jon Moxley, who is just kind of the biggest name in AEW right now, building Orange up and making him look like such a threat to the point where he almost had him beat a couple of times. That's it, man. That's the ultimate, showing of, giving back to Orange Cassidy and kind of showing, putting him in that spotlight and putting him in that position in the main event and absolutely delivering, I think was just so well done. Again, for Moxley to be the guy, of all the people on that roster, to be the one to beat Orange says a lot about what they think of Orange Cassidy. And I think this match absolutely delivered. My grade for All Out 2023 is an A. I thought this was a great show. For a show that had, very little build to it, little to no build, and had this dark cloud of the CM Punk firing controversy hanging over it, I think everyone on this show seemingly put their heads together and put on a tremendous event. And except for that 8-man tag where there was some weird chants happening when the Young Bucks showed up, there really wasn't, any opportunity, I think. I was really worried that the crowd was going to hijack this show and chant CM Punk all night. They really didn't. I think the fans are just about over it as well, honestly. And I think that if this is the show that helps AEW kind of collect themselves and move on from this controversy of Punk being fired, then, so be it. Yeah, the matches are always going to be good to great. The build wasn't fantastic. I think we can all agree on that. That's the one real knock I have on this thing, is just it was super rushed. And I'm really fatigued from watching Wembley and then watching this just 1 week later. That was, the biggest problems, but that had nothing to do with, that part had nothing to do with creative necessarily. It was just a timing issue. But yeah, overall, it was a solid ass weekend of wrestling. I got my grades. Everyone's got their opinions about these shows. But quite frankly, if you're a wrestling fan, then you should have been pretty darn happy Labor Day weekend, because there was a lot of great stuff on display, whether it was the big leagues, whether it was the independents. Wrestling was pretty wild on Labor Day weekend, and I was so happy to go back and watch these shows because I had a great time watching them. I thought Payback was excellent. I thought All Out was excellent. And yeah, I walked away from both those shows a pretty darn content wrestling fan. But those are just my thoughts, folks. What did you think of All Out? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to give this review a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Wregret and hit that bell icon to get all the notifications. Thank you for your patience as I have caught up officially to these big back-to-back pay-per-views. Hey, I got it in before the next pay-per-view, so at least I did that. And of course, we are still in the month of Sting-tember. There's more Sting-themed content coming your way as the month goes on. But until then, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.